Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Buckeye Politics. It's me, your favorite Ohioan. Today, we're going to be analyzing the Pennsylvania governor and Senate races. A lot of polls have been coming out of both these races. Very interesting races because we have two very different candidates running for the Republican side. We have Dr. Oz in the Senate race, obviously, and we have Doug Mastriano in the governor race. Two very unique, very different candidates taking on Democrat John Fetterman in the case of Dr. Oz in the Senate race, and an incumbent Attorney General Josh Shapiro in the case of the governor race. These are two races that are seeming to be shifting in very different directions, with Dr. Oz surging massively in the Senate race, while Doug Mastriano appears to be falling in the governor race. Very interesting to note that one Republican seems to be surging quite a bit, probably on track to win relatively handily, while the other Republican is dropping very quickly and probably looking like they may lose relatively handily. Will that be the case? Will we see Oz destroy Fetterman, but Mastriano get destroyed by Josh Shapiro, or will the vote be more even? That's what we're going to be analyzing today. I do want to also shout out that I will be live streaming the results of the midterm elections live next week. Beginning at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesday, November 8th. It's going to be very epic. We're going to be going for a while. Going to have some pretty awesome guests. A lot of fun's going to be had. So let's start here in the Senate race. Let's go down here and look at the polls. For a while, if you've been following this race, John Fetterman pretty much led in every single poll. Every poll from the first one ever conducted back in December of 2021 before they even got the nomination, all the way up until early October. John Fetterman led in every single poll. The margins were vastly different. Some only had Fetterman up by like 2, as seen in this poll by Trafalgar, while others had him up by like, let's find one of those polls. While others had him up like 20. According to this poll from Echelon Insights, which had John Fetterman at 57%, Dr. Oz at 36%. So John Fetterman's always maintained some sort of lead. It's just varied how big of a lead it was. Beginning of October, a couple of pollsters, which are not all that well known, including Patriot Polling, which I've never even heard of before, so I would say probably discount that one. They also use registered voters, and Wick Insights. Wick Insights isn't a bad pollster, and they used a lot of likely voters, so this is a good poll size. So about October 8th or so, we had a poll from Wick Insights that had Dr. Oz taking a pretty sizable lead over John Fetterman, and that kind of showed that he was beginning to surge. Fetterman's campaign had been dropping for a while. We had a couple of polls that had Oz narrowing the gap throughout the end of September. Early October, Oz took the lead, but then we had a bunch of polls that pretty much showed Fetterman leading. I mean, we had Fetterman. They were tied in one poll, but let's see. This poll from Siena Research in the New York Times had Fetterman up 5. A poll from CBS had John Fetterman up by 2. A poll from Rasmussen had Fetterman up by 2. A poll from Echelon Insights had Fetterman up by 3. And then there were a couple of polls that had Fetterman up by like 9 or so. And then the debate happened on October 25th. You may notice that there's 4 polls in a row that have Dr. Mehmet Oz at 48%, leading John Fetterman, and they all take place from October 26th to now. What happened on October 25th? Well, the debate happened where John Fetterman looked like an absolute idiot, to be quite frank. I mean, I know he had the stroke. I feel bad for him, but he shouldn't be running, to be quite honestly. He cannot effectively serve the people of Pennsylvania. That's been made very apparent by his debate performance and his appearances on the campaign trail. And so because of that, after that debate performance, which was seen as a huge indicator, a lot of polls said almost 50% of Pennsylvania voters said that they were looking at the debate to kind of decide who they were going to support and see what the candidates had to say. And ever since then, very accurate pollsters such as Big Data Poll and Insider Advantage have had Dr. Oz having a pretty sizable lead, including he was up by 2 according to Big Data, up by 3 according to Insider Advantage, and then up by 2. So Oz has pretty much been leading by 2 to 3 points in every poll since the debate. He's surging, even 538, which is a pretty Democratic leaning bias, only has him up by about 1%. Our Real Clear Politics has Fetterman up by 0.3. I would expect a couple more polls to come out that pretty much have having pretty much Oz leading. I think this race is pretty much over for Fetterman, to be quite frank. I mean, he might lead in a couple polls here and there, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see some sort of Fetterman surge, but really, he's been capped at about 45, 46%, and the more accurate pollsters. A lot of people agreed Oz easily won the debate, and his campaign's in a free fall, and Dr. Oz appears to be on track to be Pennsylvania's next senator. I think Oz could probably win by more than 2 to 3 points in terms of what he's leading in the polls right now. I could see Oz winning by a sizable margin, but I do agree with the polls that about a 2 to 3 point win for Oz is probably what is going to happen at the end here. Now we're going to look at the governor race, where we have the exact opposite thing happening if we come down here. to the polls, we had pretty much the same thing in terms of Josh Shapiro leading Doug Mastriano by by a sizable amount, but not that big of an amount. A couple of earlier pollsters from like August or so, such as this one from Trafalgar, had Mastriano only down by two. And at times, I believe back in September, August, and the earlier parts of this race, I believe Mastriano was actually overperforming Dr. Oz in a couple of polls. So it looked like Doug Mastriano, despite being the slightly more controversial candidate, I guess you could say, because of some of his past statements as a state senator and being a very close ally of Trump, which I don't personally don't think is going to hurt him that much. I mean, Trump was the first Republican to win Pennsylvania on the presidential level since like the 1980s. So I really don't think that Mastriano being aligned with Trump is going to hurt him that much. I think with some of his more past statements, and more importantly, his lack of funding from the Republican Party, the GOP has pretty much left Mastriano out to dry. They've said since the beginning he was too far right to win, so we're not going to fund him, even when the polls showed this race close. And then now that he's started to pull away, because Josh Shapiro has spent $40 million slamming Doug Mastriano in all these attack ads, now they're saying, well, yeah, of course, that's why we didn't fund him. He's too far right to win. Maybe if you gave him some money so he could actually have a platform to respond to Josh Shapiro, he wouldn't be getting crushed right now. Just a little food for thought for the Republican Party, because apparently they don't know political strategy, honestly. And a couple of polls here and there, such as this one from Rasmussen, has Mastriano only down by about three. Another one only has him down by about five. That's from Big Data Poll. And there is some inconsistencies with some of these pollsters in terms of undersampling Western Pennsylvania and Dutch Pennsylvania. Those are more rural Republican-leaning parts of the state. In terms of like the polls, maybe miss there may be a miss there, but I would be really surprised if we saw a 5, 6, 7, maybe even 10-point miss for Doug Mastriano. I think, unfortunately, the Republican Party just not funding him is really hurting his campaign. I also think Josh Shapiro having some sort of name recognition as the incumbent attorney general probably helps him a little bit as well. And while I certainly think Mastriano has a chance, I don't think he's fully out of this. We saw in 2020, Hillary Clinton led in pretty much every single poll in Pennsylvania, and then Trump managed to win the state. And we also are probably going to see a shy Mastriano vote. There are a pretty sizable amount of undecideds compared to the Senate race in terms of Oz and Fetterman, and I think those undecideds are probably leaning slightly towards the right if you look at demographics and stuff like that. And I mean, if you see all these ads 24/7 about how Doug Mastriano is a far-right extremist who is like all this, he's a fascist, and if you see ads a bunch like that, you're not going to be very vocal in your support for Doug Mastriano, especially in polls conducted like online where you have to give out all your information because that's how polls work. So I wouldn't be surprised if we have some sort of shy Mastriano vote. I'm just not sure if it's going to be enough to counter the massive leads that Shapiro appears to have in the polls. So while I don't think Doug Mastriano is out of this, he's certainly ran a very grassroots campaign. And in my opinion, I think he's a decent candidate. He just hasn't been able to get his message out there and hasn't been able to get funding. So unfortunately, I do give the edge to Josh Shapiro as of now. However, as I said, I would not be surprised if we do see Doug Mastriano pull off a massive upset. I think Mastriano is an upset. He's a good candidate, and he is running a very grassroots campaign. He outperformed polls in the primary, I believe, by quite a bit, and he seems to have some sort of energy. I just don't know if it's going to be enough to counter the $50 million in negative ads and pro Shapiro ads that have been blitzing the state of Pennsylvania. So with that, thank you for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like and subscribe for more.